For years, the Gripen E was dismissed, a lightweight, they said. A modest jet in a world ruled by billion-dollar monsters like the F-35. But somehow, against all odds, that lightweight is now outmaneuvering the giants. Sweden, a nation with no global empire, no sprawling defense budget, has quietly pulled off what few thought possible. They've built a fighter that rivals the most expensive aircraft ever made. And the most surprising part? This wasn't done through luck. It was done through discipline, design philosophy, and independence, the kind that doesn't beg for permission from superpowers. The Gripen isn't just a jet, it's a declaration, a statement that raw money and size don't always win wars. It's proof that in the age of over-engineered technology, efficiency can be the deadliest weapon of all. So, how did Sweden, a small Nordic nation, outsmart defense titans like the US? And more importantly, what lessons is Canada missing as it continues to chase American hardware dreams? Let's rewind. For decades, Canada's CF-18s, relics of the Cold War, patrolled the skies long after their prime. Everyone knew replacement was overdue. The expectation was simple. The US would push its golden child, the F-35 Lightning II, and Canada would follow, as usual. After all, the F-35 wasn't just a fighter jet. It was a symbol, stealthy, high-tech, and sold as the future of air dominance. Who could possibly compete? But far from the media glare, in the quiet halls of Saab's laboratories in Sweden, engineers were crafting something radically different. Something leaner, smarter, and designed not for prestige, but for survival. When Saab finally presented its bid, it immediately broke expectations. While others demanded billions in infrastructure upgrades, complex maintenance hubs, and dependence on foreign software, the Gripen offered something revolutionary: simplicity powered by intelligence. A jet that could operate from a rural highway, be refueled in 10 minutes, and be back in the air before an F-35's diagnostics even finish loading. And that, right there, is where the story of the lightweight contender turns into a global wake-up call.
Friends, make sure to like this video and subscribe to SkyJet Wings for more deep, original defense analysis. The Gripen E was built for freedom. It could land on highways, refuel in minutes, and fight through Arctic storms, perfect for Canada's rugged landscape. More than performance, it offered something priceless: control. No US authorization, no software locks, no dependency. For a nation that values sovereignty, that meant everything. For a moment, it seemed Canada had found the ideal fighter: efficient, independent, and made for its terrain. But Washington noticed. And in defense politics, independence comes at a cost. Pressure followed, soft at first, then direct. Talks of NATO unity and shared strategy masked a clear demand. Canada was expected to choose the F-35.
Years of debate and division followed. Endless reviews, headlines, and political crossfire, until finally the verdict came. Canada chose the F-35. Washington celebrated. It was more than a sale. It was a symbol of loyalty within the alliance. But in Stockholm, the reaction was quiet and resolute. Sweden hadn't lost confidence, only patience. Saab engineers went back to work, sharpening the Gripen E into something the world wasn't ready for. Then came the turning point, a NATO exercise in Europe. The Gripen E lined up beside the Typhoon, Rafale, and America's own F-35. Expectations were modest until the tests began. In a stunning display, the Swedish jet rewrote the rules of air warfare. It jammed radars, tricked missiles, and blinded targeting sensors. A phantom in the sky, untouchable, unpredictable. One NATO officer described it simply: fighting the Gripen feels like fighting a ghost. It wasn't the fastest, it wasn't the most expensive, but it was the smartest, turning stealth into an active weapon, not just a hidden feature. Where others hid from radar, the Gripen manipulated it, creating illusions, feeding false targets, and bending the electronic battlefield to its will. When word of this reached Canada, the excitement faded into silence. That lightweight aircraft they once dismissed was now outclassing the elite. And the question hanging in Ottawa was unavoidable. Had Canada spent billions on dependence, while Sweden quietly built freedom through intelligence? Because the truth was now impossible to ignore. The F-35 demanded control, data, and maintenance, all tied to Washington's oversight. The Gripen, on the other hand, offered what every sovereign nation claims to want: true independence in the sky. While others built jets that demanded empires to sustain them, the Gripen was built around one word: autonomy. It could refuel, rearm, and take off again in under 10 minutes, not from a sprawling airbase, but a stretch of highway. A handful of technicians, a fuel truck, and the mission continued. Every bolt, every system reflected a philosophy of independence. Sweden never aimed to build the flashiest or the fastest. Its goal was clear: resilience. And when the reports from those NATO exercises began to circulate, Europe started paying attention. Nations once obsessed with expensive stealth platforms now saw a lean, intelligent fighter proving that freedom can outperform fortune. But for Canada, that realization hit hard. A country that prides itself on independence had bought the most expensive and dependent aircraft in the world. Meanwhile, a small Scandinavian nation had created a jet that embodied independence itself. Public sentiment began to shift. Analysts and journalists started asking uncomfortable questions. Had Canada traded flexibility for favor? Was sovereignty quietly signed away with each F-35 maintenance contract? After all, every system update, every diagnostic check had to pass through Washington's approval. That revelation stung, not just politically, but symbolically. Because what's the meaning of defense if the key to your own aircraft sits on someone else's desk? Meanwhile, Sweden's creation, the Gripen, kept flying higher. It became a model for nations searching for balance between technology and freedom. It proved that true power doesn't come from following superpowers. It comes from designing your own destiny. In the end, the message was simple, almost poetic. Real strength isn't measured by the price of your jet. It's measured by who controls the sky above your own land. For Canada, that message was impossible to ignore. Yes, the F-35 deal promised cutting-edge technology and closer ties with Washington, but those promises came with strings attached. Every mission, every update, every line of software code flowed through American oversight. The jet was powerful, no doubt, but never truly Canada's. The Gripen, on the other hand, offered something priceless: complete freedom at a fraction of the cost. No permissions, no restrictions, just control, pure and simple. And as time passed, that contrast began to sting. Because Sweden, small, steady, and strategic, had done what few thought possible. It challenged the world's superpowers not with might, but with intelligence. The Gripen proved that innovation could level the playing field, that smart design could outshine trillion-dollar programs. And that realization cut deep in Ottawa. A nation once proud of its independence had quietly traded it for reassurance from Washington. Then came the storm. As NATO reports began highlighting the Gripen's stellar performance, admiration turned into noise. Lawmakers grew restless. Journalists filled headlines with comparisons. And across Canada, the public began to ask, did we make the wrong call? Even defense experts who once praised the F-35 were now revising their opinions. On television panels and in op-eds, they admitted the truth. Strategically, the Gripen made far more sense for Canada. Cheaper to maintain, perfect for the Arctic, and free from foreign strings. While the F-35 demanded sprawling bases and complex infrastructure, the Gripen could launch from a highway, refuel, and be airborne again in 10 minutes. A jet built for the North, not the Pentagon. Behind closed doors in Ottawa, the quiet admissions began. This wasn't just about money. It was about identity. Because in choosing the F-35, Canada didn't just buy a jet. It sold a piece of its independence. And that, perhaps, is what history will remember most. No one ever doubted the F-35's brilliance. It is, without question, a marvel of modern engineering. A jet built to dominate the digital battlefield, armed with sensors, stealth, and speed unmatched by anything in the sky. But Canada's need was never just about power. It was about control. And that's where Sweden understood something deeper, something timeless. From the very beginning, Saab didn't set out to build the flashiest or most expensive jet. They built the Gripen to give smaller nations something superpowers could never offer: autonomy. The Gripen wasn't just an aircraft, it was an idea. That intelligence could replace dependence, that strategy could outweigh politics, that true sovereignty doesn't need permission. While Canada's purchase tied it deeper into the U.S. defense web, Sweden's approach offered a glimpse of another path. A path where a nation could defend itself on its own terms. The Gripen could fly from highways, be maintained by local crews, and fight without foreign authorization. It was, quite literally, freedom with wings. Then came the moment that silenced every doubt. Saab's final test footage of the Gripen E, its silver frame slicing across the northern sky, afterburners glowing against the frozen lakes below, became more than a technical showcase. It was a message. For Canada, it was a haunting vision of what might have been. A reminder that freedom, once traded away, is never easily reclaimed. Because in the end, Canada didn't lose due to a lack of funding, talent, or technology. It lost because it forgot a truth Sweden never did. Independence cannot be bought. It must be protected, believed in, and lived. So, what do you think? Did Canada make the right call, or the biggest mistake in its modern defense history? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, where strategy meets sky.